Simon Drake stared at the glowing screen, the words from his daughter's email burning into his mind like a brand. "If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the live stream link, LOL." The message was short, cold, and final. He'd helped pay for Chloe's Paris wedding, venue, dress, even the flights for her in-laws, but now, all he got was a link and a laugh. The house was silent except for the ticking of the old clock and the distant hum of traffic outside. Simon's hands trembled as he closed the laptop, the sting of humiliation sharper than any argument. He poured himself a cup of coffee, the bitterness matching the ache in his chest, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the invitation that wasn't. If you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The next morning, the sun rose over a city that felt colder, the world outside moving on as if nothing had changed. But inside, Simon's resolve hardened. He'd spent years sacrificing for Chloe, working overtime, saving every penny, dreaming of walking her down the aisle. But as she grew closer to her fiancé's wealthy family, Simon felt himself pushed further away, his calls going unanswered, his advice dismissed. The Paris wedding was supposed to be a bridge, a chance to heal old wounds, but Chloe's emails grew colder, her gratitude replaced by entitlement. Now, as he watched the wedding on his laptop, the screen flickering with images of Chloe laughing and dancing, Simon felt invisible. He saw her in her white dress, her new in-laws beaming, the guests toasting to a future he was no longer part of. He closed the laptop, the sound of applause echoing in the empty room, and made a decision. Minnie Hook. That night, Simon called his lawyer. "I want to see the contracts," he said, his voice steady. He discovered that his name was on every major payment, and that the wedding could not legally proceed without his final approval on the venue and catering. The next morning, Simon sent a single email to the Paris venue and caterer: "Please freeze all payments and services until further notice. Legal dispute pending." The fallout was immediate. Chloe called over and over, her messages swinging from anger to pleading. "Dad, please, you have to fix this. They're threatening to cancel the honeymoon suite." Simon let the phone ring, too busy enjoying a quiet breakfast and a walk in the park. Minnie Hook, as the family scrambled to save face and Chloe's new in-laws blamed her, Simon's ex-wife called, furious. "I did what was fair," Simon replied. "She made her choice." The Paris wedding became a local scandal, the story spreading through the family and community. Simon watched from afar, his dignity intact, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The real revenge, he realized, wasn't in shouting or fighting, it was in walking away, letting the truth speak for itself, and reclaiming his own worth. The next move was Chloe's, but the game was now being played on Simon's terms. Minnie Hook for next part. The fallout from Simon's quiet move was immediate and brutal, the kind of chaos that spreads faster than gossip in a small town. Chloe's phone calls came in waves, first angry, then pleading, then desperate. "Dad, you can't do this. The venue says they're locking the doors. The caterer won't deliver. The hotel is demanding payment in full." Simon let the phone ring, his resolve hardening with every unanswered call. He spent the morning walking through the city park, the air crisp and alive, the world suddenly full of possibilities he hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, in Paris, Chloe's dream wedding was unraveling. Her new in-laws, once so eager to show off their American connection, now glared at her across the breakfast table, their voices sharp and accusing. "You said your father was reliable. You said the money was guaranteed." Chloe tried to explain, but the words caught in her throat. She called her mother, who only sighed and said, "You made your bed, Chloe. Now you have to lie in it." Minnie Hook, The family group chat exploded with messages, some blaming Simon, others blaming Chloe, everyone scrambling to assign blame and avoid responsibility. Chloe's fiancé, Pierre, was furious, his family's reputation now at stake. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone," he hissed, his accent thick with anger. "You said your father would pay. Now we look like fools." Chloe's friends, once eager to post selfies from the Eiffel Tower, now distanced themselves, their social media feeds suddenly silent. The Paris wedding became a local scandal, the story spreading through the family and community like wildfire. Simon watched from afar, his dignity intact, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He spent his days volunteering at a local charity, finding purpose in helping others who knew what it meant to be left behind. Minnie Hook, that night, as Simon sat on his porch, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Chloe called again. This time, her voice was small, almost childlike. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted everything to be perfect." Simon listened, his anger softened by the memory of the little girl who used to run to him with scraped knees and wild stories. "Perfection isn't real, Chloe. But respect is. And you lost mine when you shut me out." The silence on the line was heavy, the kind that comes when the truth finally lands. Chloe began to cry, her sobs muffled by the distance between them. Simon felt a pang of regret, but he knew the lesson had to be learned. Minnie Hook, as he hung up, Simon realized that the real revenge was not in ruining Chloe's wedding, but in forcing her to face the consequences of her choices. The next day, the venue's lawyers contacted Simon, demanding payment. Simon's lawyer replied with the contracts, showing that Chloe and her fiancé had violated the terms by excluding him. The venue sided with Simon, and the in-laws were forced to pay the full bill themselves. Chloe's world had collapsed, but Simon's had finally begun to heal. The game was not over, but for the first time, Simon was playing by his own rules. The days after the Paris disaster were a blur of silence and shame for Chloe, her world shrinking with every unanswered call and every friend who quietly unfollowed her online. Simon heard from neighbors that she'd returned home, her suitcase in hand, her eyes hidden behind dark glasses as she slipped into her mother's house. The community, once eager to gossip about the big Paris wedding, now whispered about the scandal, the unpaid bills, and the daughter who had left her father out in the cold. Simon kept to his routines, volunteering at the shelter, tending his small garden, and finding comfort in the quiet dignity of a life lived on his own terms. Minnie Hook, one evening, as Simon was watering the tomatoes, he heard footsteps on the gravel path. Chloe stood at the gate, her face pale, her hands twisting nervously. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Simon nodded, leading her to the porch where they sat in the fading light, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle and the weight of everything unsaid. Chloe's apology came in fits and starts, her words tumbling out between tears. "I was wrong. I let them turn me against you. I thought if I could just make the wedding perfect, I'd finally belong. But I lost everything, Pierre, my friends, even Mom's respect. I'm so sorry, Dad." Simon listened, his anger softened by the memory of the little girl who used to beg him for bedtime stories. "Chloe, respect isn't something you can buy with a big wedding or fancy friends. It's something you earn, one choice at a time." She nodded, her tears falling freely now. "I want to make it right. I want to come home." Minnie Hook, Simon hesitated, the old wound still raw, but he saw the sincerity in her eyes. "Coming home isn't about moving back in, Chloe. It's about rebuilding trust. You'll have to work for it. Chloe agreed, her relief palpable. Over the next weeks, she helped Simon at the shelter, volunteered at the food bank, and slowly began to repair the relationships she'd broken. The community watched, some skeptical, others quietly supportive, as Chloe learned the value of humility and hard work. Simon found himself proud of her progress, but he kept his boundaries firm, determined not to let old patterns return. Minnie Hook, as summer turned to fall, Chloe's transformation became undeniable. She found a job, made new friends, and even reached out to Pierre to apologize, not for the wedding, but for the person she'd become. Simon watched her grow, his heart swelling with pride and hope. The revenge he'd set in motion had forced Chloe to face the consequences of her choices, but it had also given her a chance to change. The real victory, Simon realized, was not in payback, but in the possibility of forgiveness and a future rebuilt on respect. Autumn settled over the city, the leaves turning golden red as Chloe's new life took root. She worked long hours at a local nonprofit, her hands blistered from sorting donations, her smile growing more genuine with each day she spent helping others. Simon watched her transformation with cautious hope, his pride tempered by the memory of the pain she'd caused. Their relationship was still fragile, every conversation a careful dance around old wounds, but the distance between them was shrinking. Minnie Hook, then, just as the family began to find its rhythm again, a new test arrived. Chloe's old friend, Julia, called with an offer, a job at a prestigious event planning firm, the kind of position Chloe had once dreamed of. The catch? The firm was run by one of Pierre's relatives, and the job would mean moving back to Paris. Chloe was torn. "Dad, I want to prove I can stand on my own, but I'm scared. What if I fall back into old habits? What if I lose myself again?" Simon listened, his own heart aching with the fear of losing her a second time. "Chloe, you can't run from your past, but you can choose who you become. If you take this job, do it for the right reasons, not to impress anyone, but to build something you're proud of." Chloe nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I want to make you proud, Dad. I want to make myself proud." Minnie Hook, the decision weighed on her for days. She talked with Simon every night, their conversations growing deeper, more honest. She asked for advice, but Simon refused to tell her what to do. "This is your life, Chloe. You have to choose." In the end, Chloe accepted the job, but with conditions. She would keep her apartment in the city, continue volunteering at the nonprofit, and visit Simon every month. The family gathered for a farewell dinner, the air thick with emotion. Chloe stood to speak, her voice steady. "I know I hurt you all. I know I have a lot to prove. But I'm grateful for the second chance you gave me. I promise to honor it." Simon hugged her, his heart full. "You already have, Chloe. You already have." Minnie Hook, as Chloe left for Paris, Simon felt a mix of pride and fear, but also a deep sense of peace. The revenge he'd set in motion had forced Chloe to face herself, but it had also given her the chance to grow. The real test, Simon realized, was not whether Chloe would succeed or fail, but whether she would keep fighting for the life she wanted. The next chapter was hers to write, and for the first time, Simon was content to watch from the sidelines, knowing he'd done his part to help her find her way. Paris was a world away, but Simon felt every mile as Chloe settled into her new job, her emails and calls growing more confident, her stories filled with the small victories of a life rebuilt. He found unexpected joy in his own routines, volunteering, gardening, and hosting Sunday dinners for friends who had become like family. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer defined him. Then, just as the leaves began to fall and the air turned crisp, a call came that shattered the fragile peace. Emily, Simon's niece, was in the hospital after a car accident, her injuries serious but not life-threatening. Chloe called from Paris, her voice trembling. "Dad, I'm coming home. I need to be there for Emily, and for you." Simon's heart swelled with pride and worry. He picked Chloe up at the airport, their hug long and fierce, the old distance between them finally gone. Minnie Hook, the family gathered at the hospital, the waiting room filled with the hum of worry and hope. Chloe took charge, organizing meals, comforting Emily, and making sure everyone had what they needed. Simon watched her move through the chaos with a calm strength, her transformation complete. But the emergency also brought old wounds to the surface. Brian, still struggling with his own guilt, lashed out at Chloe, blaming her for leaving, for not being there when the family needed her. Chloe stood her ground, her voice steady. "I made mistakes, Brian. But I'm here now. I'm not running away again." The confrontation was raw, but it cleared the air, the siblings finally able to speak honestly about the pain they'd both carried. Minnie Hook, as Emily recovered, the family spent long evenings together, sharing stories, laughter, and the kind of forgiveness that only comes after surviving the worst. Simon realized that the real revenge was not in Chloe's suffering, but in the family's survival, their ability to forgive, to rebuild, and to find joy in the aftermath of betrayal. The emergency had tested them all, but it had also proven that the bonds of family, once broken, could be rebuilt stronger than before. Minnie Hook, as Chloe prepared to return to Paris, she hugged Simon tightly. "Thank you for never giving up on me, Dad. I know now what really matters." Simon smiled, his heart full. "We all had to learn, Chloe. But we learned together." The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Simon knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, his family would face them as one. With Emily on the mend and the family's wounds slowly healing, life began to settle into a new, hopeful rhythm. Chloe returned to Paris, her calls and messages now filled with gratitude and stories of small triumphs, her first successful event, a new friend, a quiet evening spent reading by the Seine. Simon, too, found joy in the ordinary, tending his garden, sharing meals with neighbors, and volunteering at the shelter. The pain of the past was still there, but it had become a thread in the tapestry of their lives, not the whole story. Then, just as the first snow dusted the city, an unexpected invitation arrived. Chloe's company was hosting a gala in Paris, and she wanted the whole family to come. "It's not a wedding," she wrote, "but it's a celebration of new beginnings. I want you there, Dad. All of you." Simon hesitated, the memory of the livestream link and the humiliation of being left out still fresh. But Emily and Brian were eager, and even Mark agreed to make the trip. Minnie Hook, the family arrived in Paris, their nerves jangling as they stepped into the grand hall, the air alive with music and laughter. Chloe greeted them at the door, her smile radiant, her arms open wide. "Welcome to my world," she said, her voice full of pride and hope. The evening was a whirlwind of introductions, toasts, and stories. Chloe's colleagues praised her work ethic and kindness. Her boss pulled Simon aside to thank him for raising such a remarkable woman, and even Pierre, her ex-fiancé, stopped by to offer congratulations and a handshake. The family, once fractured by betrayal and regret, now moved through the room as a unit, their laughter and warmth drawing others in. Minnie Hook, as the night wore on, Chloe took the stage to give a speech. She spoke of mistakes and second chances, of the pain of losing herself and the joy of finding her way back. "I hurt my family," she said, her voice trembling. "But they never gave up on me. They taught me that forgiveness is the greatest gift, and that love is something you build, one day at a time." The applause was thunderous, and as Chloe stepped down, Simon hugged her, his heart full. "You did it, Chloe. You really did." The celebration was more than a party. It was a declaration that the past would not define them, that the greatest revenge was living well, loving deeply, and building a legacy of hope and resilience. Minnie Hook, as the family walked home through the snowy streets, Simon realized that the journey was almost over. The pain of the past would never fully disappear, but it no longer held them captive. Instead, they chose to remember the lessons learned, that dignity is worth fighting for, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and that the truest legacy is the family you build, the lives you touch, and the courage to hope. The return from Paris was bittersweet, the city's lights and laughter fading into memory as the Drake family settled back into the rhythms of home. The farm was quiet, the winter wind rattling the windows, but inside, the house was alive with the warmth of new traditions, Sunday dinners, movie nights, and the easy comfort of a family that had learned to forgive. Simon found himself reflecting on the journey, the pain and pride, the moments when he doubted everything and the ones when hope had surprised him. Chloe called often, her voice bright with stories of her new life, but it was a letter that arrived one snowy morning that brought everything full circle. The envelope was thick, the handwriting careful, and as Simon opened it, he felt a familiar ache in his chest. "Dad," Chloe wrote, "I wanted to thank you for everything, for the lessons, the patience, the tough love, and the second chances. I know I hurt you, and I know I can never take back what I did. But I want you to know that I'm proud to be your daughter. I'm proud of the man you are, and the family you built. I hope I can make you proud, too." Minnie Hook, Simon read the letter twice, his eyes wet, his heart full. He called Chloe, and for the first time in years, their conversation was easy, unguarded, full of laughter and plans for the future. Emily and Brian joined them for dinner that night, the house filled with the sound of children's laughter and the smell of bread baking in the oven. Lauren, now a friend rather than a rival, brought dessert and a quiet apology, her own journey of redemption still unfolding. The family sat together, sharing stories and dreams, the pain of the past now a memory, not a wound. Simon realized that the true revenge was not in Chloe's suffering, but in the family's survival, their ability to forgive, to rebuild, and to find joy in the aftermath of betrayal. Minnie Hook, as the night wore on and the fire burned low, Simon took out the letter and read it aloud, his voice steady. "We've all made mistakes," he said. "But we're still here. We're still a family. And that's what matters." The family raised their glasses, the toast echoing through the house. "To the Drake legacy, may it endure for generations to come." That night, as Simon sat on the porch, the stars bright above, he knew that the journey was almost over. The final lesson had been learned, and the promise of tomorrow was brighter than ever. The final morning of winter arrived with a hush, the sky painted in soft gold and lavender as Simon Drake stepped out onto the porch, a mug of coffee warming his hands. The farm was quiet, the fields glistening with frost, the air alive with the promise of a new day. He watched as the sun crested the horizon, bathing the land in light, and felt a peace settle over him, a peace hard-won, forged in the fires of betrayal, forgiveness, and the slow, steady work of rebuilding. Inside, the house was waking up, the smell of bread baking, the laughter of grandchildren, the low murmur of his children planning the day's work. Lauren, now a part of the family again, moved through the kitchen with a grace that came from humility and hard lessons learned. Brian and Mark loaded tools into the truck, their easy banter a sign that old wounds had finally healed. Anna and Sarah sat at the table, writing new letters for the box Simon had started, a tradition that had become the heart of the family, a way to pass on the lessons of hope, courage, and love to the next generation. Minnie Hook, as the family gathered for breakfast, Simon stood at the head of the table, his heart full. "We've been through storms," he said, his voice steady. "But we've come out stronger. This farm, this family, is my legacy, but it's also yours. Promise me you'll keep building, keep forgiving, keep hoping, no matter what comes." The family nodded, their eyes shining with tears and pride. After breakfast, they walked together to the old oak tree, where Simon buried the new letters beneath its roots, the earth soft and rich. "This is for the future," he said. "So that when you're lost, you'll remember where you came from, and who you are." The children helped cover the box, their laughter ringing out as they chased each other through the grass. The day unfolded in a blur of work and joy, fields to tend, fences to mend, stories to share. As the sun set, the family gathered on the porch, the sky ablaze with color, the air filled with the scent of honeysuckle and the sound of cicadas. Simon sat in his old rocking chair, Lauren beside him, Brian and Mark on the steps, Anna and Sarah with the children in their laps. They watched the stars appear, one by one, the world growing quiet and still. Minnie Hook, Simon closed his eyes, grateful for the journey, for the family he'd fought for the lessons learned and the love that had endured. He knew that the pain of the past would never fully disappear, but it no longer defined them. Instead, they chose to remember the hope, the courage, and the forgiveness that had carried them through. As the night deepened and the farm settled into peace, Simon whispered a promise to the stars: "Whatever tomorrow brings, we'll face it together." The Drake legacy would endure, not just in land or money, but in the hearts of those who had learned to love, to forgive, and to begin again.